can we really make a record on our own in our practice space? And if so, how do we go about it? How do we learn all of this? How do we get started? Should we just buy a bunch of gear and turn some knobs and experiment? And is it even a great idea? Let's discuss. This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band Podcast. My name is Benedikt Hein. I am your host, and I'm here with my co-host. He's from Canada. He's a mastering engineer. He's been a musician and music producer for most of his career, and his name is Malcolm Owen-Flood. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you on. This is the first episode that we do here, so I'm excited to see where this goes. And to explain to you guys what we're doing here is the following. We want to talk about the topic of, can I make a record on my own in my practice room with my band or as a solo artist? Is that really possible? And if so, what do I look out for? What do I need to do to make that work properly? And so I think we just get started and talk about this question. What do you think, Malcolm? Is it possible to record on your own as a musician, DIY style?
I think it's absolutely possible. I know I've done it. I know other bands that have done it. In preparation of this, I was reading about big bands that have really done it. And we're lucky enough to be at a time where it's more possible than ever before. If we think that the Stones were making an album at their house way back when, we can definitely do it now with all the tools we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So but how did they do it back then? Actually, it must have been like a nearly impossible thing for the average musician, right?
Exactly. Yeah. When you look at home recorded albums back then, the Stones was, I think it was here. I pulled it up. It was on Exile on Main Street, and they were already a massive band. So they could afford to have engineers come in. They got a big studio mobile truck to come and park in the basement of their big castle, and they made an album. Between driving their giant boats around and stuff. So luckily, you don't have to be at that level, I think, anymore.
No, absolutely not. The tools to do it are cheap, and you can start right now basically with very little effort and very little money that you have to put into it. But here's the thing. I think that also led to many musicians think that if you can play your instruments, if you are a musician, if you know how to operate basic computer stuff and software and have $1,000 to spend on some basic recording gear, that this is enough to make a decent record. And I would say, yes, you can record on your own, but no, that's not enough to actually make a really good, professional sounding record that gets your message across and that will resonate with people. You can always try and just figure things out, and you can record, but it will probably not sound like a real record when you're starting out, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I fully agree with that, and I think chances are anybody that's listening to this right now, if you're listening to this, you've probably already tried to record yourself, right? You've probably bought some piece of gear or downloaded some free software and been like, I can do this, no problem. And you're probably listening to this because it didn't turn out that great. And that's that's exactly where I started, was doing that. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna do it myself, no problem. And then realizing that it didn't sound anywhere near as good as I wanted it to, and that kind of led to this whole career in this field, right? I'm sure it's got to be similar for you, Benedikt.
Absolutely. But the thing I want to add here is, in fact, the first time I remember that very well, the first time I ever listened to a recording that I did, of myself or my band, I was totally thinking this sounds like a record, but that was just because my ears were not developed at the time, and I didn't know what I was talking about. But I can remember hitting play and hearing my band come out of the speakers, and I was like, dude, that's the coolest thing ever. Like, we sound absolutely amazing. Like, I even compared what I just did to other records, and I still thought I could immediately compete with that. That's just how delusional I was. And,
yeah, I think you're right. I think there's like this initial stage where you think you're already a rock star, and then eventually you realize that it's not on the level that you want it to be.
No, not at all.
As soon as that like awakens in you, it's like the curtain comes down, you're alone on stage.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
So sad.
Yeah, so sad, really. But like, that's the thing too. You just need a little bit of time and experience to like develop your ears and to even know what is good. Like, you could know all the techniques, you can know all the things, but like, you have to have the ability to tell a good recording from a bad recording, and it's hard to put that in words. And like, it's just a thing you have to just learn, or you have to have somebody who shows you like what to listen for. Actually, you have to train that, and that took a while for me, mainly because I was doing it completely on my own, and that always takes longer. I mean, it's a thing you said. Yeah, people who are listening to this, they probably recorded, or you probably recorded on your own already. And one or two of two things probably happened. You're either thinking, wow, that's totally great, and that's all I ever wanted, and I'm super happy, and I will continue to record from now on. Or you think, wow, that's like super frustrating. I expected a lot more. I don't sound like what I wanted to sound like at all. What do I do?
Let me draw on some experience here, because I remember when I started trying to record my own band, I was in a death metal band at the time, and there was a few of us that were kind of getting into it. Like, so my drummer actually owned the software, and he was trying to figure it out at first, and he just kind of got frustrated, and it wasn't working. We couldn't make anything. Like, we didn't know how to overdub and stuff, and like, we didn't know anything. So he got frustrated, and then I sat down, and I got frustrated too, but I loved it, and I stuck with it. Where I think he was like, I'm just going to, I think he was just glad that I took over.
Yeah.
And he could just go back to playing the drums, right? But I think that's not necessarily how you have to find your way in this. I think that now with, educational resources available, I think he could have learned. And if you get past that initial hurdle by educating yourself, anybody can do this if they learn the skills and develop their ear and develop the right mindset. It doesn't have to be this like gift,
Absolutely. But and that's what I was trying to say. I think it needs to be, you need to be a person who's willing to invest the time and energy to educate yourself and not give up too early. Because if you expecting like very quick and easy results, like, this is not gonna happen probably, or at least not always. And there will always be a situation where you just have to like dive into something and like just learn and study and try and fail again, and eventually you will get there. But if you're not that type of person, you're gonna have a hard time. Like, and that's why I'm saying I think there are people who are listening to their recording, and then you're like, wow, that's totally cool. Even though if it's not, but you're hooked, and you wanna learn how to do it better, and you want to do it again and again. Or you're the type of person who just thinks, oh no, that totally sucks. I don't ever want to deal with that again. Like, that's too frustrating, and like, you give up instantly. So I think in every band, or in many bands, like, there's this one guy girl who just likes the tech side of things, and like the figuring stuff out and solving those problems.
Right.
And and if you are that type of person, then there's a lot you can do these days, and that's I think what we're trying to tell you here. And let's say you have somebody in the band, or you are the person in the band interested in recording, and you want to figure this out. You have the basic gear, you have the drive and the energy to learn that. If you mastered all of like how things work, how to put that together, how to put a microphone in front of an amplifier or a drum kit, how to record in a DAW, how to operate the software, let's assume you've learned all of that. Then the really interesting stuff starts, because that still doesn't make a record sound like a record. You have to know all these tools, and then just use them on autopilot and like let your creativity and your like the art take over, you know? And that's where it gets really exciting, I think, because that's where a record starts to become a record, and where I think people really need the most help and guidance, because the other stuff compared to that is still easy. I mean, you know what I mean? So
no, there was kind of two things you said there. If you're not willing to kind of persist, and if you're too afraid to fail, it's not going to work for you. And I think that's something that a lot of musicians can probably relate to, just with the bands as well. Like if your band's doing good, it's because you just don't stop when you have a bad gig. You don't stop when you can't write a good song for a while or something, right? It's the same with recording. It's the people that can't look into the future far enough to realize that it is going to get better. Like they are going to improve, right? If you keep doing it. And so that's going to make a big difference. And then the other thing I like that you said is that you kind of got to get those skills developed enough that you can get back to just being like creative and that making it an art, right? If you have to be like, you know, spending so much time doing every little step, like figuring out how to mic up the guitar or how to like, you know, compress a vocal or how to gain stage and stuff like, there's countless stuff. But if you have to spend too much time, it's going to kill the creative flow of the recording session. It's not going to be as fun. The takes are going to be worse. Like everything just kind of falls apart. So it's like learning an instrument. Like the drums aren't fun until you can play a beat, right?
Totally.
But once you can play the beat and start kind of improvising, or like it's the same with any instrument, getting to that, like over that first hurdle is such a big difference.
Absolutely. And not only does it enable you to be creative with your music, but also you got to know how to use the tools, to use them creatively, to you got to get to the point where you do not only know how a thing works, but why you place a microphone a certain way, why you move it like a couple of inches to one of the sides, you know, or whatever. You know what it does, but you don't have to think about it. You know the reason why you're doing something. You're not randomly turning knobs or moving mics, but you know why and what you want to achieve with that, and you have a vision and you have a plan how to get that vision across. And like, because all of us, like, and all of you musicians, you have a sound in your head, or you should have a sound in your head. Like it starts with that. You have your song, and then you have a vision for how it should sound and why it should sound that way, and what this song should do to the person who listens to it. And that's the first step. You have to know that, and you have to be able to kind of envision that. And then you have to have the tools and the knowledge to create that and to make the song do that. And that's where most people get stuck, because they can plug a microphone into an interface and they can hit record in a DAW, and they have the vision in their head, but they just don't know what to do with all those tools to make that vision come out of the speakers. You know, that's the thing where most people think get stuck and fail eventually.
I agree. Should we talk about, because I kind of thought of like 3 potential ways that people could start making like music.
Of course, I'm curious.
Like their practice space or their really any situation. And I kind of broke that down to, and if you have other ideas, let me know. But I thought there was the in-the-box method, you know, where people are able to now make music entirely on their phone, tablet, or computer, right?
Yeah.
Without recording any audio at all, right? That's now fully possible. So that's the most affordable. And then there's like the small interface route, where you just have to get like a cheap couple $100 interface, a cable, and a microphone, and you're off. Like there's free DAWs and stuff now as well, right? So
yeah,
there's that route. And then the last, which is kind of the old school route, I guess now, is recording out of your like Jam Space PA system into your computer. Like some of them have like a little USB out or whatever, right? So there's kind of like the large console recording from a Jam Space, or not necessarily large, but you know, probably spitting out a single file, so you can't really mix it in the computer or whatever. The interface route, where you're just recording one thing at a time, you know, trying to keep it under $200 or something.
Yeah.
And then there's the in the box method, right? So those were kind of like the 3 methods I kind of thought of that people could do immediately. Does that seem accurate?
That absolutely seems accurate. I haven't thought about the third option actually, but that is probably where many of you are right now. You probably have like a mixer or whatever in your rehearsal room. Maybe use that one live. And many of the newer ones actually have a small interface built into them. Yeah. And why not start with that and use that? I haven't even thought about that, but that's totally viable. I think I forgot about that option because when I was starting out and was in a band, we had like pure analog like mixers with no USB or whatever interface. And then when I started recording, I bought an interface. So I never really used one of those. I know they exist and I've seen them a lot, but I never really used one of those. So that I kind of forgot about these. But yeah, they are probably in many rehearsal rooms these days. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I know my band has a Behringer X-Air, which is like the, you see them in like venues all over the place. The guys mix it on an iPad or whatever, right? And everybody in the band can pull up the app on their phone and make their own monitor mixes. Those things are incredible. You can do 16 channels of multi-track recording right there and compress, and it's like a DAW built into it. Dude, it's amazing.
It's so cool. We have one of those and we used it. We bought it because we went we went to a different studio, not my studio, a different studio, because we wanted to get away from like where we usually are, just to see something different, to be creative, like in a space that no one of us was familiar with. And we went to, or at least most of us, one of us knew it, and we went there and just for songwriting, we went to that studio, we locked ourselves in there and we just did a week of songwriting. And for that purpose, we bought that exact board that you just described. And it's so amazing. Like we set it up on day one and everybody had the app on his phone and would do his own monitor mix. And we would record the whole recording and practice sessions, the whole songwriting and practice sessions. And It was such a smooth workflow. And to be honest, like the results we recorded were actually pretty good. I mean, I still would have to compare them to like proper recordings in the studio, but for that price, it's incredible what you can do. I mean, this is
it's amazing. And just before I forget, you said you recorded your jam sessions.
Yeah.
And like we just got to drive that home. If you're a band and you're not recording your jam sessions and you have the ability to, just like do it. It's so important. And like if you're just wanting to get a demo out, like just have material just to show to a venue or other bands, or listen for yourself, or who knows, maybe you guys are the best band in the world and your rehearsal recordings could be an album, right?
Yeah.
You never really know. But just do it, record yourself. That's like the best practice right there. You're going to listen to it and be like, why does it sound like this?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about that real quick. I have 3 reasons why you should absolutely do that. The first one is you won't forget your ideas that you came up with. That's the most obvious one, but hey, I mean, we are all pretty forgetful creatures, and like you could jam for a couple of hours and have the greatest ideas, but if you don't remember them the next week when you get together again to rehearse, then they are gone. So always record them just for the purpose of like saving your ideas. That's the first thing. The second thing is, like analyze what you did, analyze how tight you were playing, because you don't really hear all of the stuff while you're playing as accurately. It's always completely different if you listen back to recording. Sometimes you think you just played the best take ever and it was just perfect, and then you listen to the recording and you're like, oh, not so perfect. And and you can learn so much and you can improve if you just listen to what you're playing regularly and analyze that and then improve based on that information. So that's the second reason, improve. And the third reason is you never know. Sometimes there could be the best take ever in such a session. Sometimes you play a thing or you sing a line or whatever and it's just perfect. It's just the moment. The energy is perfect. The performance is perfect. And it might be imperfect, like technically there might be flaws. There might be like the intonation might not be perfect or whatever, or you might not have new strings in the instrument. Like there will be flaws, but still if the performance and the vibe and the energy is perfect, that take might make it onto a record just because you cannot like reproduce that ever again. Like I've tried that often. Like I had that a couple of times actually, where I tried to recreate something in the recording that a band sent me as a demo before recording, and we couldn't get the same vibe, the same feeling in the studio. And if you then have a somewhat decent recording, you can just try and use that on the record, and maybe it's like it's the best decision. And that's the reason number 3. So that should be enough to convince you to get some sort of recording equipment and just record your rehearsals, your practice.
Absolutely.
Hours.
One more to add there. Number 4 is pre-production.
Yeah.
If your band is planning to go into the studio and you happen to already rehearse to a click, especially, you can record these demos to a click track in the jam space, and then you now have a multi-track pre-production demo of your song where you can, go into the studio and start replacing those one by one at higher quality. But you've got it mapped out. It's like all the pieces are there. That's a lot better than just going into the studio with an acoustic guitar and a vocal.
Absolutely.
Pre-production track. So I'm sure we're going to do a whole episode on pre-production alone.
Absolutely.
But just to touch on that.
Yeah.
And if somebody doesn't know what pre-production is, it's the prep work before you go into the studio.
Yes, and that's also, we're going to do an episode on this, but if you don't know what pre-production is, if you didn't just know that, and if you don't do it not right now, look it up and start doing it before you record. That's all I want to say in this episode. We did a whole episode on that, but just do it because it's essential. It's a part of the recording process, and many people don't do it. I haven't done it for years. I must admit that I was already recording my bands, and we never did proper pre-production, and we totally should have. So look that up and just do it. Back to the topic of this episode. I think what were we talking about before we went down the rabbit hole of recording your rehearsals?
We were talking about some different ways that people can make a record on their own.
Yes, exactly. The interface route, the in-the-box route, or the mixer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And another thing that I want to talk about is, now we have basically talked about the different options you have, but I want to talk about why you actually want to make a record on your own, and what do you want to achieve, and what compared to going to a recording studio, what's the pros and cons, and what's the why behind it. I think the industry has changed a lot. I think you don't need to do all the things with professionals and expensive studios, expensive gear, and all that kind of stuff like you'd have to a couple of years ago. So there's that, and many people record on their own, and they it's possible. So you can save money. That's the first why that people might have. But you might just want to do some things on your own just to save money, or to save time, to make it less stressful. To be able to work on your own schedule. So those factors, like the fact alone that you just can't do it, and you wanna use that to your advantage. So that's number 1. But I also think when the decision is already made, when you think you want to record on your own, why do you want to record your songs a certain way? What are you trying to achieve? Why do you record a record in the first place? No matter how you do it, why are you doing it? Are you doing it for yourself? Are you just trying to capture your songs and then show it to your friends or whatever? Or are you trying to reach an audience? If so, who's that audience? And do you have goals for your band? Do you try to get signed, or are you trying to play bigger shows or get booked on a bigger tour or whatever? So I think this is very, very important to think about, and because this is kind of the foundation, and this determines how you go about it, and this dictates what you do, and it informs many of the decisions you're going to make. And so people often don't really think about this step. They just know they have a band, they have songs, and they want to make a record. And then they start making a record without ever thinking about the why. Yeah, and I just think this why is so important, because only then can you make the right decisions. Only then can you say, okay, I'm going to go into a recording studio, work with XYZ, or I'm going to do it on my own, or I'll hire a mixer, a mastering engineer, or I just try and figure it out myself. You can't make these decisions if you don't have a clear idea of what you're actually trying to achieve, I think.
I agree, and thought of a good question for you, Ben. what do you think the best benefits, or what do you think the benefits were when you decided to record yourself? Like what were you kind of hoping to get, and what maybe came even inadvertently because you took that step to recording yourself?
Okay, so I think we have to separate into two groups of people here, because there's the people like myself who try recording their own band. I think most of us start with just wanting to record their band, just to make their first record or demo or whatever. And the first reason to do it or try it is probably money in most cases, I think. I think most people when they start out and when they're young, like they are just trying to save money and they just cannot spend thousands of bucks on like going to recording studios. So they just do it for that reason. That's most often I think the first reason people try to do it.
I think that, as well as, but like in the case of maybe not a band but a solo artist, I think most people solo artists often do it just because they're shy. They want to do it privately.
Yeah, that's also a big one. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And ultimately after that, I think there are two groups of people then. If you're like me and you did it and you listened and you got totally hooked and you got so excited about it, and you just, that second that I heard my own first recording, I kind of instantly knew that this was what I would want to do for the rest of my life. This really, and I didn't ever think that this could be my job or anything. I just thought this is the coolest thing ever. I want to spend as much time as I can doing this. So that kind of, I didn't know it back then, but that kind of started my audio career because I got so obsessed with it that I never actually did anything else again in my life. So that kind of worked. But I think there's the other group of people who do it and they like it. They like the fact that they can do it on their own, but they still want to be just quote unquote musicians. They want to record themselves. Yes, they want to save money. Maybe they want to like work on their own schedule, like not have the pressure of having to get it right within a certain amount of time in the studio. They want the freedom to work on their own, but they're not necessarily trying to be a professional audio engineer. They're not interested in that. So there's this group of people who are not as obsessed about like the technical part and the engineering and the making records, but they just think it's cool that they can record themselves and help their band and their music career. And I wasn't that at all. Like, I always enjoyed being in a band, but I never wanted to be a professional musician. That was never a goal of mine, as much as I enjoy touring and being in a band. But the technical stuff, that just fascinated me. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are just the other way around. And so I think, to go back to your question, the pros, if you look at the pros and cons, like, the pros are definitely you can save money, you can save time, you can make the recording, or not necessarily time, that you don't save time, actually. You will take more time than going to a recording studio. But the time you spent recording can be less stressful, and it doesn't get more expensive if you take more time, as long as it's in your free time. So that's also a big one, because many, especially not so experienced musicians, I think they perform better if they are not under pressure, and you gotta get used to that scenario of having to deliver a take within a certain time frame. So I think, money, less pressure, and ultimately like total creative freedom. Because if you are your own producer, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to do anything anybody tells you. You can just do what feels right, and there are no rules. Whatever you think sounds cool is cool, and you can just do that, and that's fascinating and fun. And I think that actually many people complain about how the quality of music that's released today decreased during the last couple of years, because so many musicians put out DIY recordings, and if you go on Spotify or wherever, there are a lot of really crappy recordings out there that would have never been released like 30 years ago or whatever. But I think, yes, that's true, but I think there is also some art and some music today that's absolutely awesome and would have never been recorded and released if the band or the artist didn't have the freedom to do it on their own and without rules because many of those mistakes or things you're not supposed to do ended up being hits or things that really resonated with people. So I think overall for the music scene and if you look at it from if you only look at the art, I think it's pretty exciting that you're able to do that. And I think that a lot of great art and music just exists because of that reason, because people can do it on their own. So that's a big pro here for me.
Oh yeah. I've got a couple success stories that I could think of. There's kind of one that you touched on. In our case, we started recording our own bands, and for people that don't know us, we're very far apart, so we're not in the same band. We both just happen to do this, and I think a lot of people end up doing that. They record their own band, and they fall in love with it, and they eventually become pro audio engineers, right? So that could be anything. You could become the producer, the mixer, the mastering engineer. There's a million places to land there. Or you become a musician who learns these skills, and that can really turn into some amazing things. Like a couple success stories. Billie Eilish. Her and her brother made a DIY recording, right? That she just got 6 Grammy nominations or something for a home recorded project, right? That's amazing. And you mentioned that you don't have to follow rules when you are self-producing. And in her case, she broke them, and changed it. The game changed because she broke these rules, and people were like, I haven't heard anything like this. I don't even like her music, but I understand why people do. And that's something that just probably wouldn't have happened if she went and worked with a pop producer, right? It would have been pretty instead of ugly. And people really liked that it was dark. The other success story and cool thing, like you mentioned, that music might not have seen the light of day. And this band I know on the island here, they recorded this. They're called Loving, so people can look them up if they want. They recorded an EP or an album. Actually, I'll double check that. They recorded 7 songs, long EP, back in 2016, and released them. They did it all themselves. It's pretty DIY. And then nothing really happened. They didn't really do anything. I'd never heard of this band. And then all of a sudden, Spotify picked it up, and they now have millions and millions of streams on all their songs. It just hit some playlists, went huge. They're making crazy money.
Wow.
They did this DIY album, and now they have a career just because they decided, let's make some art.
Yeah.
They didn't invest a bunch of money. It was just pure, we're going to make some art. It's going to be music we want to hear. It was for them. And that wouldn't have happened without recording, learning to record yourself, doing a good enough job that, people want to listen to it, because obviously people do if you're getting millions of streams. So all of that kind of came together. And in the case of a band like Loving, it's a huge success story. The other cool one that I just thought about as you were talking is Bon Iver.
Oh, yeah.
You know Bon Iver?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, yeah.
I never knew how to pronounce it. Now I know, thanks to you.
Oh, I hope I got it right. That's how Canadians say it.
yeah, that's probably right then.
yeah, probably. I'm pretty sure he's Canadian. At least he recorded that big famous album of his in some cabin in Canada, But he went to some cabin, made an artsy album, right? That's how he wanted to do it. Did it himself, locked himself out in the middle of nowhere, made some cool art, and people attached to it. If he had recorded the same songs in a fancy studio, I don't know if it would have had the same magic. I don't know if it would have worked.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it wouldn't have. And yeah, absolutely. And those are, I think the Billie Eilish one, I thought about that. I forgot what do you call it? Bon Iver?
Bon Iver.
Bon Iver, okay.
Yeah.
But you're totally right there. And I didn't know about that band you were talking about. That's also a cool, very cool story.
Oh, there's so many examples of that. That's just one. And that's a lottery ticket. You can't really, your business plan can't be to count on Spotify making you famous, but it can.
It absolutely can. Yes.
And ultimately, it was the songs, because if a bad recording and bad song gets put on a good playlist, it's not going to keep doing well.
Nope.
So they had the right ingredients and then got lucky with those.
Exactly. And also at the same time, I've heard, not only doesn't the bad song and a band recording obviously not work, but I've heard absolutely amazing recordings of just absolutely boring songs, and they also won't ever resonate with anybody. And so you can have you can go to the fanciest studio in the world and drop all the money you want on the production, if the song and the creative stuff behind it, if it's just not there, that all doesn't help. Not at all.
Absolutely. That's why we're going to be a good podcast, guys, is because we're not going to ignore that. We're going to talk about pre-production and how to make your song good as well.
Exactly. And actually, that's very cool you just said that, because now I can actually like rephrase it and say properly why the world needs another audio podcast. Because what we're trying to tell you is it doesn't matter if you know all and have all the tools. It doesn't matter if you have all the money. It doesn't like that. That stuff is cool, and you have to know how to use some of the tools. But what really matters is what do you want to? What are you trying to do? And do you know how to use your tools to achieve that? To actually make that come out of your speakers. And there's a million podcasts and YouTube videos and courses and whatever on the topic of recording already. But we don't really want to teach you how to like put an SM57 in front of a guitar cab. Like that's already out there. Like you can do that. It sounds great. Like if you put it there, it sounds like this. If you put it there, it sounds like this. We will talk about stuff like that. But most of all, we talk about the context. When does it make sense to put it there? When does it, like, why would you want to do that? What are you trying to achieve? And we want to encourage you to make like bold decisions. That's also, I'm very big on this, because many people tell self-recording bands to be safe, to make safe recordings. Like, don't use any effects when you record, because you can always do that afterwards. Like, never clip anything. Like, never, make sure it doesn't distort, like, as a rule. And do this, do that. Always place your mic that way. Use that mic because that always worked. That's like the safe option. And I think that's so boring, because yes, that works technically. And yes, you then have clean files and you can reamp them. You can sample replace them. You can do all the things with them. Cool. But what I want to encourage you is try different things. Be bold. Like, if you like a sound, if that sound does what you want it to do, like, then record it. If I mix a song, if people send me stuff to mix, I don't really care at all what has been in the chain there. I don't care. If you like 15 pedals between your guitar and amp, as long as that's the result that you were trying to do to achieve, then do it and send me the recording of that, and I will have to deal with that, because that's part of your performance, that's part of your song, part of your art. So I don't ever tell anybody to play it safe. I just think make exciting art, and I think from like always making the safe decision, that never leads or very rarely leads to exciting music or exciting art. So that's what's really important to me, and I want to point that out. So everything else you can look up on YouTube or whatever. Like, you'll find out how to record stuff safely.
Yeah. There's a lot we're going to be able to cover, which is going to be great. Like, if you're listening to this, you're listening to two guys that have spent their life in production, mixing and mastering. But not only that, we've both been playing in rock bands for like rock and punk and metal, kind of all over for a long time as well. So not only are we coming at this from the audio side, so you are going to hear about cool gear, you are going to hear about tricks and stuff about recording and stuff that maybe you aren't doing and most people should be or something. We're going to try and give you like those game changer important ones, but you're also going to learn about how these skills can affect your band and how you can leverage these skills to leverage your band. And like, we've just got a lot to share, and I think it's going to be really useful. So expect creativity, mindset, engineering, and business in a sense, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
We just want you to be able to take this as far as you can. Absolutely.
And people like always remember, your band is, if you believe it or not, but your band is like a small business. Even if you don't make money, even if you never plan to make money, it doesn't hurt to look at it from that perspective. It doesn't hurt to have goals, because everybody has goals. And if your goal is just, I want to impress my friends or my mom or whatever, or I just want to have a recording for myself to enjoy and listen to, that's also a goal. And there is a strategy and tactics to get you there. And you can be efficient or inefficient. You can like there's all sorts of decisions you can make, and some bad ones, some good ones, and we'll try to explain to you what we think are good decisions to help you get there, and to have like a strategy and to view this whole thing sort of like business owners view their business doesn't hurt, even if you don't view yourself like a business. So, and that's I think the topics that you just said, Mark, are pretty much what we'll be talking about. So gear, mindset, recording all different kinds of instruments. Then, of course, the context of of everything. Like a drum kit alone is rarely going to be on a record. Like there's going to be some things. Maybe, and that probably is a pure drum record. But usually you're always viewing everything in context to other stuff, and that also might change some decisions that you make. And there's a lot we can cover and talk about. But the last thing we want to do is just repeat boring content that dozens and hundreds and thousands of other people already put out there. So that brings me to a really good question. If you who are listening to this, if you have suggestions, topics, things that you want us to talk about and on this show that you haven't heard anywhere else, or if you just couldn't find a solution for your specific problem, or I don't know, just let us know. We will take that into consideration. I mean, we've already come up with a pretty long list of cool topics that we can cover, but I think if somebody like writes us and has a cool idea that we could talk about, we're totally open to doing that, because after all, this whole thing should be helpful for you, and we want to bring value, and we only want to talk about things that actually matter to our audience. So yeah, please do that. Please email us anytime. You can always email podcast@theselfrecordingband.com and just let us know what you want to hear from us, or let us know that what we just told you was total bullshit. If you just don't agree, if you think that's just not true, what we're saying here, just let us know. That we are absolutely, honestly, we are curious. We want to know. So yeah, let us know. Write us an email, and I'm excited to hear the responses to this. The next episodes will be much more specific than this one. So we kind of talk about. We just try to, in this episode, we just try to let you know what we are doing with this show and why it even exists. In the next couple of episodes, by the time you're listening to this one, there will already be 2 other episodes available at least, and so you can binge through those if you want. So in the next episodes, we will introduce ourselves so that you know who we actually are and why we think we have something to share that's actually valuable for others. So this is that. So we are going to introduce ourselves. We're going to interview each other. And then there will be specific episodes on certain topics. So there will be a topic on recording a certain instrument, or a topic on how to approach a certain situation, or how to overcome a certain problem, how to stuff like that. But it's always going to be much more specific than this episode. And everything else, we'll see how it goes. We might have an idea here and there, but yeah, that's basically the plan right now. So Mark, anything else you want to add to this?
No, I think that's great. I would again encourage everyone to email us any questions or ideas. And no matter how big or small, if it's just a small question, we can still fit it in. We can just mention, oh hey, by the way, we got a question about the angle of a SM57 on the bottom of a snare mic. Do this, we could just fit that stuff in. It doesn't have to be a big thing we can talk about for 40 minutes. So just send that kind of stuff in. It's helpful to us. We'd love to hear from you. And same, if you want us to shut up and stop talking about snares, we can do that too. Let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than that, if you want to get more information on all of what we just talked, you can always go to theselfrecordingband.com. There is a blog, there are YouTube videos, there are some quick Q&A videos that I did just with my phone. There's articles, stuff you can download, PDFs. Just check that out, go there, and we will always let you know if there's new stuff on there to check out. Cool.
Yeah, make that your required reading, guys. If anything in this wasn't making sense, like if you're just not at the level where you don't know what an interface is, you got to go to that website and you got to join the Facebook community. And it's going to just like, you'll instantly be on the next level and understanding what we're talking about. And this is all going to be so much more valuable for you.
True. Thanks for saying that. But I agree. That's the whole reason I did that. And I can confidently say that I think it's helpful for people. So yeah, go there, check it out. You will always find the show notes to each episode if you just go to the self-recording band / and then the number of the episode. So the self-recording band /1 will be the show notes to this episode. That will always be the case for future episodes. You can subscribe to this show on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. You can listen wherever you want, and you can subscribe and leave a comment, leave a review. Yeah, that's it basically for this first episode. I hope
awesome.
I think one more thing to say is, as you might hear, I'm from Germany. I'm not a native English speaker, so please bear with me if I say stupid stuff from time to time. And Mark is here to correct me. It's actually pretty cool to have a Canadian or somebody who can speak proper English doing this with me, because then I'm not alone here with my crappy English. But yeah, I hope that's okay. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Now I'm just hoping that there's no like real proper English speakers that are going to call me out on my terrible English.
Okay.
Honestly, you speak just as good English as I do.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. More accent though, but then yeah, but cool. Then that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Yeah. Bye.
See you next time.